All right, I'm going to turn on the mic, not because, we have a large audience. This is about quality, not quantity, right? So not because we have a large audience, but because these sessions are recorded. And so I want to make sure that this lives forever in posterity. But yeah, hang out, come forward, and interrupt me as we go. Ask questions. And is it okay that I don't stand up on that table in the dark corner? I promise I won't spit on you. I don't throw things. We're good. So good afternoon. And another, I suppose, caveat. I do recognize with some humility that I am standing between you and the bar. I'll do my best to make this worth your time, and the rest we can do from there. And of course, the clicker is working. Hi. So anyway, I'm Scott. I'm the CEO of Codence. We're a custom software shop, as many are in this community. We also build and sell Genesis Accounting, Genesis Business Metrics, which is a fully contained accounting and finance and analytics tool built natively in FileMaker. So that's what we do. And I have some hobbies. I'm sure you didn't come here to learn about me. So internships. I think of interns much like I think of puppies. I have a huge amount of affection for this topic and for interns specifically. And I want to share that enthusiasm with you today. And I'm sure there's a metaphor somewhere here about keeping interns from peeing on the carpet, but let's not go there. Today, I want to preach a bit and convince you that hiring interns is a good thing to do for a business. And then once I lay the foundation of that, I'll share with you what worked for Codence and what I've learned sort of the hard way over the years, and give you a roadmap for bringing interns into your organization. Hopefully that's helpful. And again, I really would encourage you, just raise your hand and interrupt me if you've got a question that you don't have to remember 28 slides later. So let's dive in. Why interns? For those of you who are not children of the 80s, this is from Do the Right Thing. So you're going to get a lot of movie references in my slides today. So right out of the gate, I know it's kind of a touchy-feely, squishy kind of reason to open with, but this is 98% of why I hire interns, because I think it's just the right thing to do. From there, there's a certain pay-it-forward sensibility in all of this. I got mentored and taught how to operate as a mostly functional adult by other wonderful bosses in my past. I want to be a wonderful boss if I can and pay it forward. Here's where self-interest starts to kick in. And I think from a conceptual standpoint, I really want you to wrap your heads around and embrace this particular thought. I believe that teaching makes you stronger. If you can teach something, you're good at it. And building a company that is a good environment for interns will, I guarantee it, I really promise you this, it will make your company better and stronger in a lot of really fundamental ways. It'll force you to get right about your processes and be able to express those processes to young people who are coming into the business. It'll force you to get clarity around what are our values, what are we about as a team, and the more that you can get good at communicating those things to folks, again, who are entering their careers for the first time or, say, early in their careers, the better you'll be with your entire crew. Forces you to get good at tools, all kinds of stuff. I really believe in this. So another movie reference, Parenthood from, I think this came out in the 80s, is that right? Maybe 90s? I don't remember. Anyway, do you guys, can you believe Keanu Reeves is in this movie? And he looks 12. This slide makes me sad when I found it. Anyway, I digress. The point is parenthood, right? We need to propagate the species. We don't have a biological imperative, but I'd argue that we have an economical imperative. And you heard Brad's talk this morning. We're going to grow the customers in our industry. We better have developers who can serve them. One of the other benefits to interns are new perspectives. You often get folks who come from different backgrounds, even different ethnicities perhaps, or different genders, what have you. You're going to get new perspectives, certainly different generation in my case. You're going to get some new perspectives. And your interns are going to ask questions that it wouldn't have occurred to you to ask. And figuring out oh yeah, that I think of as obvious, and I think I know the right answer, but let's stop and think about that. They'll force you to test your assumptions. All good things. This is my favorite slide. Interns will bring creative solutions to things. I can't tell if that's a homemade bubble machine or if it's a do-it-yourself air conditioner. That could either be ice or soap in there, but it's awesome nonetheless. So, and we've seen some interns do some really interesting things where, I'll ask for a report, and in my head it's a sub-summary, right? So it's, we can do that in our sleep in FileMaker, and sure enough, you get this awesome crosstab thing with charts and graphs, but they're written in JavaScript and so forth. So the solutions that interns come up with can be pretty astounding. So I don't want to belabor this. I think you get the point. But this is going to help you sell this idea to business partners, to if you're in a large organization. I think having a story of why interns are valuable to your organization is useful. And you start with the qualitative stuff. So this is where I begin, with the qualitative stuff. And again, I want to reinforce teaching makes you smart. If you can teach it, you can get good at it. That, I think, is the biggest benefit here. I want to reinforce for us all what the state of our industry is. I talked about parenthood and propagating the species. This is a chart of the growth of mobile devices, and this is pulled straight from Andy Lucates's Workplace Innovation Platforms talk. And he's pointing out here, the growth of smartphones, and then plotted against that is the growth of US computer science degrees, graduates. And you'll note that that orange line does not meet the growth curve of the blue line. And this is back in 2015. Obviously, the numbers and the acceleration of mobile devices has increased. So this is to say, and I only reinforce, that we are dying for new developers. And interns are a great way to make new developers as opposed to hiring them. They're early in their career. They're going to come in, and you can mold them and shape them in hopefully terrific ways, and fill in some of the challenge that we all face together in an industry where developers are scarce, particularly good developers. For some reason, there are lots of people applying to jobs at Codence who are, should I reflect on the appeal of Codence in that? I don't know. Now I'm tripping over my own point. Anyway, we need good folks in the industry. And I'd argue that a good team is not a pyramid. You've seen a standard hierarchical pyramid with the manager on top, and then an org chart that looks like a tree upside down or whatever. I think of teams as circles, not triangles. And I think at the bottom of the circle, I wouldn't think of it as the bottom at all, but in the lower quadrant in my chart here, I think you need entry-level folks for sure in your organization. And there are financial reasons to consider, as well as just the shape and makeup of your team. Entry-level folks are, let's face it, less expensive. So if you're building a team, I think interns fit into a strategy where you've got a healthy team of different generations, different expenses, different perspectives, and so on. So I've been focusing on the qualitative, little Jerry Maguire slide for you movie fans out there. Show me the money. Let's get real. This is not free. Hiring an intern takes money. So in our case, we bring in interns for 4 months. We pay them $25 an hour, and we commit to at least 20 hours a week. So you do some simple math. Even I can do that in my head. That's $8 grand, right? But it's not just $8 grand that an intern will cost you. You also have to factor in your opportunity cost. If I spend, say, a couple hours a week in a meeting with my interns, that's a couple hours a week that I'm not off doing other things, generating value for my business. In my case, Codence is a service company. We bill by the hour, and so it's, even for a person like me, simple math to simply calculate an opportunity cost. Let's say I'll say that I can't maybe always hit that perfect $195 an hour, which is our retail rate. So let's charge ourselves $150 from our opportunity cost. $9,600 is what it takes to manage an intern. every single week for 4 months. You add that up, throw in a few dollars because you've underestimated, because, come on, we're software developers, that's what we do, we underestimate, and call it 20 grand. I know I tend to speak in terms of dollars per hour, and I will continue to do so just because it's the easiest metric. But if you're a part of a large organization, I think this all hangs together as well. The point is, well, actually, I've got 2 points. One is do the math. Figure out what it'll cost. If you're trying to figure this out, if you're a business owner or if you're championing this cause up the food chain, so to speak, in a larger organization, you're going to need some numbers with you. And then secondly, I very much encourage you to define success very clearly, both qualitative success and quantitative success. Walk into a conversation, or if you're the sole decision maker in your organization, great, at least spend some time doing some homework and get clear in your head what you're trying to accomplish. And I'd encourage you to meet with your interns early in their experience with your team or your business, and share with them what the definition of success is. And then 4 months later, so well, not 4 months later, 2 months in, you should measure it at the midpoint and make sure, check in and see if you're hitting those success measures. And then at the end, confirm that you hit success. And there's an added benefit here. If you do that, you'll be helping your interns understand how business works and how business decisions get made. And they can then bake those items into whatever recommendation letters or future career path adventures they go on. I'd really encourage you to do this. It's very useful to get clear in your head what you're doing. Your interns will get clear in their heads. Your other managers in your organization or colleagues will know what's going on. And then as they move off into the world, that clear definition of success is hanging with them. So here's some more easy math. As it turns out, 195 is larger than 60. Who knew? This is so our retail rate is 195. I'd encourage you to go to your clients and be completely transparent about this if you have clients. Go talk to folks and say, hey, look, I've got some really talented, sharp, well-supported computer science interns with us, and we'd love to put them on your project, and we're going to charge for them. And if it's $60 or $50 or $12, whatever, you can do the math, however it works. But we have really found that clients are totally open to this, in fact, appreciative. There are things that you can do, QA or user testing or what have you, that are perfectly good things to do in the hands of interns so that you can leverage their smart brains, but at a lower cost, and pass that savings on to your customers, your clients, what have you. This is a great way to justify hiring an intern. Some more math you can do. It turns out that 60 is greater than 25. Who knew? And if you're paying folks $25 an hour and you're charging 60, well, that sounds like a business reason to do this as well. Now, I don't want to kid around. This would be what I would think of as sort of burdened math. You've got direct costs of 8 grand. You're doing 9,600 or so in opportunity cost. Again, it sort of depends on your organization what you see as an opportunity cost. Dollar per hour, I just figured 12 hours a week is maybe on average what I can do with an intern coming into a business or into an organization, and it kind of depends in our case on project load. Is it a right fit? Does this person have the particular skill that we need to do something quote unquote billable? So there are lots of caveats. But even with all my caveats and sort of standing on one foot and balancing carefully in front of you here and doing really difficult math, I'm still showing a loss of 6 grand. Now, this is where I go back to the do the right thing slide. For me, the benefits of bringing an intern into an organization and using internships in general to both help other folks start their careers, that in and of itself is reason enough for me. But then again, the benefits of being an organization that can teach young people how to get into the business, there's another real concrete benefit to my organization. Our team will be stronger if we can take in interns. And so is that worth 6 grand? Yeah, I really think it is. I'll share, I've been in this industry for a number of years, and I've done recruiting, and I've hired a lot of interns, as it turns out, both at Codence and at prior companies. And I'm without hyperbole, it is the thing about which I'm most proud. I've done lots of neat FileMaker databases, and I've done good work for clients and so forth. I've hired some wonderful colleagues, some of whom are here. Hi, Jillian. That's awesome, and that's good juice. But just seeing interns come in and really thrive and sort of graduate from Codence and then move out into the world is deeply satisfying. So I'm happy to pay $6,000 for that. Let's do some more math. So again, there's so many caveats to this. You can make a spreadsheet tell you anything. I think I need a T-shirt that says, "Don't trust spreadsheets." And I work at a company that builds accounting software. So do that math. Anyway, so here's the thing. If I meet with 2 interns in the same meeting, it's only 1 hour of my time. So I can leverage my management efforts and distribute that to more interns, and those interns can bill more hours than one intern can. And the logic is somewhat roughly the same if you've just got one intern and that person is capable of doing 24 hours a week of billable time or what have you. Or if you're a part of an in-house organization, you can motor through that much more of the to-do list or what have you. Again, I don't mean to prescribe your business model. I just want you thinking about this. So if you hire more interns, eventually you just start making more money, right? So it's kind of like going to the store and things are on sale, and the more you buy, the more you save. Works out. If you buy that, I'll enjoy the beer you buy me at the bar in a moment. It is true, though, that there are some economies of scale in all of this, and I'll circle back around to that leveraged point about hiring more than one intern in a moment. Here's some math that is actually a lot more concrete, and I want you to really soak this in. So what's the alternative to hiring interns and training them and using them as a way to feed the entry-level layer of your organization? Well, recruiting is the other option, right? You got to go hire people. So let's say you're going to go out and hire someone who is the equivalent of an intern at the end of their internship. You're probably looking at an entry-level position at the end of an internship if you choose to hire someone. You with me? And an entry-level person here in the US, well, I work in Denver. In the Bay Area, it's different. 50 grand is probably where you're starting in terms of salary. If you turn to a recruiter, that's going to be 10 grand in expense right out of the gate to the recruiter, plus or minus, depending on the recruiter. Or if you do it yourself in hiring, you're going to spend who knows how many hours, you and interviews with your teammates and so forth. You're going to spend a lot of energy interviewing candidates and sifting through them and figuring out who the right fit is. And the costs you're looking at, they're real costs. The do-it-yourself option, I threw $2,500 in there just thinking that you've got some Indeed ads to buy and LinkedIn ads and maybe some travel if you fly someone in. It really depends on your recruiting process. So you might argue that my numbers are whatever. Your business will be different than mine. So you've got some direct costs. You've got a certain number of hours. So I put under interns training and work under hours. So rather than just investing time in recruiting, I don't get anything back when I sit down with a candidate and interview someone for a position in a sort of traditional recruiting sort of way. Whereas with an intern, if they're rolled up their sleeves and I'm training them and they're doing work, I do get something back. So the hours are not quite equivalent. Ultimately, though, it's that bottom row that I really want to call your attention to. So if I turn to a recruiter, the presumption is that that recruiter has well vetted the candidates, plural, and will feed me fewer candidates, so it's easier to go through the recruiting process. So I'll get a better candidate faster from a recruiter. That's the pitch that folks like Brandon Hayes will make, and I think arguably he's got a good point. Alternatively, if I do it myself, it'll take more time and so forth, but here's where risk comes in, right? So if a recruiter says, hey, this candidate is going to be of better quality than other candidates, that may or may not be true, but come on, let's face it, if you're a hiring manager, what's your hit rate on perfect hires? I don't actually know what mine is. But I have hired some folks who are not the right fit. And that's an expensive mistake. You've got to go through first off, you've got to start in denial, right? You hire someone, and of course they walk on water, and they're going to be perfect. And 1 or 2 months in, you're like, maybe I missed something, or maybe this person missed something in choosing us. And then you've got to go, I'm going to manage my way through it because I'm a brilliant and amazing manager. So you do denial for a while. Eventually, you part ways in the case where someone is the wrong fit for your organization. That's massively expensive. So I think you get the point. I'm belaboring it. Forgive me. If you hire an intern, there's very little risk in this case because especially if you do the smart thing, which is to bookend your internship. There's a start, there's an end. And at the end, if that person is not a great fit, give them a big hug, have lunch with them, give them their references, and off they go into the world. It's a really smart way to bring new people in. So let's say I've convinced you finally. I talked about the qualitative reasons why you bring on an intern. I've talked about the quantitative reasons. And that recruiting cost is a big one, obviously. So let's say I've convinced you here. Now what? Where do you find them? So there are some risks. I don't want to suggest that interns are a risk-free way to bring folks in. If you just bring in the wrong person and they're just this kind of pleasant but otherwise inert lump that's sitting in your office or on the other end of a Slack message or what have you, then it's going to suck away time and energy and so forth. That's not a good move. So you do have to vet these folks. And I'd really encourage you, these folks are actually harder to interview for because you're looking for soft skills in a lot of ways. You're looking for a very smart, very functional human being who may or may not have the skills that you need to do the kind of work that your business does. So there's a different kind of recruiting that you need to do. Likewise, where do we find these folks? I want to talk about the 42 program that Brad talked about at the keynote this morning. So 42 is an amazing school. It is free. Yes, it's free. It's not a scam, I promise. And students from all over apply. They fly to, in this case, Silicon Valley. There's another 42 in Paris. They fly in. They get free housing. They get discounted meals and, free laundry and stuff like that. And the 42 students go into an intensive, very shortened program to learn computer software development. And it's a really interesting program in the sense that there's no classroom. There aren't professors, as I am, standing in front of you giving lectures. They plop students down in front of a computer. They give them some challenges that they have to meet. And they say, good luck, there's the internet. By the way, you can't use Wikipedia. By the way, you can't use these other resources. Figure it out. And they just have to figure it out. It's a really tough way to learn something, but it's very effective. We've had a huge amount of success bringing folks from 42 into our organization. They're really sharp. One of the reasons why they're sharp is that they're non-traditional students. They have tended, in my experience, to be a little bit older. They've got some work experience oftentimes. In a couple cases, they've come from sort of different backgrounds where the income deltas and so forth. So you'll get people who are self-starters, who can manage themselves. If you're at all inspired by this, which I hope you are, contact Janine Campbell at FileMaker. She's the one who's managing their internship relationship with both 42 and Apple Academy, and she can plug you into some great opportunities to pull interns into your organization. I also encourage you to look into your local metro college or university, and I do this for a reason, similar reason to the 42 students. You tend to find folks in school who are there for a reason. They're looking to get a job. They're not looking to go find themselves or whatever when I was a kid in college. Traditional four-year students are wonderful, and I was one, of course, and many of us, I'm sure, were. But for me, I've got a better hit rate on turning to metro schools and trade school-ish schools. I mean, you need your computer science degree, folks. I'd really encourage that. But you get folks who are ready to work. And so it helps with, okay, they don't have the skills, but they're smart and they're functional. In the case of a metro college or a metro university, I'd encourage you to get to know a professor. And by professor, I don't mean in the abstract. I mean a person. Call up their computer science department, ask who to talk to. Schools are awesome about this. They really are dying to work with businesses. I mean, the couple times I've done this, the response was immediate and enthusiastic. And you get in touch with a professor, you go buy that person a cup of coffee, you walk away an hour later really much smarter. They know their stuff, they know what their students need, they know what they're looking for from an internship program. They may have knowledge of grants or scholarships or what have you that can help finance the internship. Now, if you're a for-profit organization, that may be a thing, but whatever. Professors are a great free resource. Use them. All right, so you found some candidates. They're sitting at a desk or across a webcam with you. How do you interview them? I did a whole talk last year on recruiting. I won't try to encapsulate that. Actually, you know what? I've got a captive audience. I'm going to do another hour on recruiting. Good luck on that drink at the bar. No. So I watch the mechanics of how a person handles the whole interviewing process. Do they respond quickly and reasonably to emails? Do they show up on time to the interview? If someone is 10 minutes late to an interview, like the chances of them getting a job with me are almost zero. Like, okay, time zones, I get it. I struggle with math too. I've made mistakes, I'm human, but that one's hard to get over. And I can't stress this enough. And it's true for recruiting as well. If you're not interviewing people on camera, you're doing it wrong, period. Then in order to figure out if they're smart, again, these are folks who have computer science backgrounds. I always give them a data modeling exercise of some kind. And I don't prepare them for it. I just say, okay, we're going to do a little exercise now. Let's just talk through it casually. I'm not trying to grill you. Boy, there's a whole aside there. I don't believe in grilling people during interviews. I think you're there to understand what this person can do, not how do they handle pressure. Yes, there's some pressure in your job, and you want to find out if they're smart, but I really hate that whole computer science sort of arrogant thing of like, let me put thumb screws on this person and see what happens. Anyway, so I give them a data modeling problem, and I start talking about, one of my go-tos is publishing, right? So you've got a publishing company, and you've got a book, and that's it, and it's a one-to-many, right? Done. No. You've got authors, multiple authors. You've got a title, a physical book, an edition of that book, which printing is it? How do you data model that? And in a few minutes of talking to somebody about data modeling, you'll see if they get it or not. And sure enough, ask them to sketch something up and hold it to the screen on your webcam. It's a really effective way to find out if someone just gets into the domain of software development. And then oftentimes I'll also ask them to explain something technical to me. And it kind of varies on the candidate, but I'll pick something off of their resume. Talk to me about what is Node.js. I don't know what Node.js is. What's that do? Why would you use it? And see how they explain it. First, see if they're right. That counts. But see how they explain it. Can they explain it to a layperson? I think that's really important. Let's see. What else? References. Yeah, just ask them to follow up and send you references. Written is great. I don't have time to call their mom and 3 other people. So just get an email from someone, letter from a professor, whatever. That's awesome. Those are good. And this is more about, can this person go through the process of getting you references than it is about the actual references themselves. The references are going to be glowing no matter what you do, right? But how quickly did they get it together? How professional are the references? Who did they choose from among? If they chose their mom, that's probably a bad sign, right? So see who they chose, and then, sure enough, read the reference and read the wonderful glowing things that someone had to say about this person. If there's a school project, at 42, the students gather in teams, and they produce a project, review that project. And then I'd encourage you, again, on camera, webcam, share screen, ask them questions about it. And you don't necessarily have to be engineering centric. You can, like, hey, let me look at that script or that calculation or that web page or whatever. How'd you build that? Or you can also just, hey, how'd you design this? What are you imagining are the use cases? What are the requirements you were meeting? Those are all good questions to have. And generally speaking, I'll interview folks like this in about 45 minutes or so it goes quick. And if it turns out that you really like the person, then sure, make sure your calendar has some room on it and go long. And in the beginning of the conversation, ask for permission to do that. So that's how we interview. I'd like to introduce you to some wonderful interns. So Justin Perferle on the left is, he was an intern from the first round of 42 students. And he's one of the few people I've ever seen who has on their, I don't have my badge on. This would have been a better joke if I had the badge on. Anyway, imagine a badge. So he's one of the first people I've ever seen with a first year ribbon on his badge and a speaker ribbon. So in his first year in the FileMaker community, first year at DevCon, he's a speaker this year. And he's talking about load testing and performance testing on AWS. It's actually really cool. I'm going to pitch his session to you. You can, using the approach that he helped design for us, we've got a particularly large client who's working with a Winchester House, I think was Andy's term this morning, Winchester House solution for 250 FileMaker clients across 8 different locations. And they've got an in-house team who's building it. We're handling the analytics and the finance and the accounting side of things. We've got an in-house team who's been working on it. And we said, have you tested it with more than 2 users? And the answer was kind of oh, no, we'll get to that. You might want to, was the advice. Anyway, so sure enough, fast forward a year later, we, with Amazon Web Services, can spin up a FileMaker server, throw 250 clients, simulated clients at it. Those clients can all log in. This is all automated. It takes one person to push the button and make this happen. All 250 clients can log in, run scripts, navigate from layout to layout, et cetera. We record all the results, and then we tell our client what the results are. Likewise, load is an issue. Volume is an issue. What happens when you've got 3 months or 6 months or 12 months of data in this solution? Well, as it turns out, in the case of the client that shall remain unnamed, and we're working on this. I don't mean to pick on these folks. They've done really solid work. The solution's actually quite amazing. But sure enough, there was a routine in it that took like 40 seconds when there was 1 month of data in it and 2 users, and scale up to 250 users and throw 12 months of data at it. It was a good 45 minutes while that routine ran. And I don't think users are going to be cool with a beach ball that runs 45 minutes. I would be happy to go to the pool and wait, but users not so much. Anyway, I digress. Forgive me. But this is the work that a really smart intern can do. There's a study, I forget whom. I need to go dig this up and give credit where credit is due. But there's a study that said an experienced, solid, high-performing software developer will outperform a poor-performing developer by 10x. And maybe that's hyperbole, maybe that's proven. I'm sure there's a spreadsheet somewhere that makes that case. But never trust spreadsheets, says the accounting guy. But it's not 1x. There is a huge leap of productivity between someone who's really sharp at their job versus someone who's maybe not so sharp at their job. Justin is awesome. I'm going to work for him someday. I'm looking forward to it because we need smart bosses in our world. Valerie at the top is also brilliant. I threw this sort of data problem conceptual thing at her. My requirements were literally, well, here's some scribbles on a whiteboard, and this is kind of what I'm thinking. Can you help me make sense of this? Like 3 days later, I had charts in JavaScript. It was awesome, and we're trying to figure out a dashboard and how to represent data in a meaningful way. Totally smart. Love it. I love working with smart people. Kai on the right, he's a high school student, and we just connected to him through personal channels. He's so smart. He had never even started computer science stuff. And I just threw some problems at him, and sure enough, there was a database like 3 days later. It's awesome. And then Erica is a great success story here as well. She came into the organization from 42. She's now got an in-house position. She's off and running at an amazing job. And she's one of those people that can always say something positive no matter what happens. It's really a great quality. So I promised I'd give you a plan, and I'll get there, maybe. No. So I lump things, again, because I have a consulting and a services background. I lump things into quote-unquote billable and non-billable activities. But revenue generating or on mission for a department, and then sort of infrastructural stuff or what have you. I hope you can translate. All I'm doing is sharing with you what I've learned. So layout work in FileMaker is pretty easy to have someone new to FileMaker do. Yes, there are lots of layered objects, and you've got script triggers and things of that nature to worry about. And yes, you have to go through and explain the difference between classic and themed-based styling and so forth. But someone can get that stuff pretty quickly. So layout work is a great place to go, especially if you have a large solution for 250 users that's this behemoth and has 1,500 layouts that need changes. That's the job for an intern. QA testing is an obvious one, and QA can come in two cases, right? Two ways. You can throw use cases at someone, follow this script, tell me what happens, does it work or not, or just open the solution and say, click on it, tell me what you figure out. Training users, I found that the whole business of if you can teach, you can learn, and you get better at your job if you can teach. That's true for interns too. If you teach someone who's smart and understands software to be a power user of FileMaker and a power user of your solution that you're deploying for your clients, they can then do a great job of training end users for that solution. In fact, I'd argue they could probably do a better job of training end users than you can, because you're the one with the developer brain and you think in terms of developer stuff. Interns are less constrained because they have fewer bad habits. Data entry is obvious, documentation's pretty obvious. Videos, have your interns record videos using the software, use them as training vehicles. And that's a great project for an intern. Can they express themselves? Can they organize their time? And there's some mechanics there too, right? They got to figure out video software and all that kind of stuff. Awesome task for an intern. Reports and other outputs. So this one could, anyway, there are only a few cases that this really perfectly applies, but I have found that the hard work is such a generalization, forgive me. Anyway, it's the end of the day, we can generalize. The hard work of building a FileMaker solution or a software application in general, often, not always, is the workflow that you're trying to support in the data entry. And at the end, yes, you need a report, and yes, dashboards can be complex and so forth. But I have found that if you turn to an intern and you say, okay, here's the solution, now build me a report, that is a self-contained problem in our world to some large degree. So you might think about that. If they can be productive working on an output for a solution rather than the whole workflow input, that I think is a good candidate for work. Then internal stuff. You can, no, you can't. You should, I will evangelize here, you absolutely should have your interns helping with your marketing efforts. So they should be blogging about their experience and saying, what a wonderful place your company is to work and so forth. Obviously keep the hyperbole to a reasonable minimum. Spring cleaning, either real spring cleaning, like go to the server room and throw out those cardboard boxes. That is a legitimate use of an intern, I believe. Not a perfect one, but, and then virtual spring cleaning. Hey, our internal wiki could use a refresh and we need to archive old pages that are no longer relevant. Please help me with that. Spring cleaning. IT tasks, there's an endless supply of them. Turn there. Internal documentation is another one. Pro bono projects. I want to pause and pitch Join Table. Maka and Connor from Soliant has set up an organization to do matchmaking between FileMaker folks who are interested in doing pro bono projects and organizations that need FileMaker developers to do that. Track down Maka and talk to her about Join Table. Jointable.org, is that the right URL? Do any of you know off the top of your heads? Anyway, we'll get there. It's an awesome cause, and doing pro bono work. We've done 2 pro bono projects in the last 12 months or so. That's a great place to lend a hand. I got it right? Okay, jointable.org? Cool, thank you so much. So pro bono projects are a wonderful way to deploy interns, to do really good, meaningful work, and at the risk of sounding like a heartless capitalist, in one case, it led to some billable work for us. So our intern became a salesperson for us. That wasn't so bad. And then free projects for clients or constituents. You know, if your mom needs a gardening database, make the intern do it. I could tease a certain business partner about let's see, a whole sort of birth schedule database. I've got to get the riff right before I can tease you about it. And he's not paying attention. He's checking his phone. All right, I digress. So here's what you don't do. A few years ago, I hired a Salesforce intern. And I said, hi, intern, welcome to this business. It was a prior organization. And sit down in this chair. Here's your computer. And go to Trailhead and learn Salesforce. Then I walked away. That was a miserable experience. I feel bad. Still to this day, I feel guilty. That person hated working for me and bored out of his mind. You could just see the boredom oozing from his pores, the poor guy, sitting in a corner. And I was like, yeah, talk to so-and-so in another state, I think another coast, for help if you need it. And you know, that person didn't know the intern from Adam. And anyway, no plan is a bad thing. I think it's really easy to think you can, oh yeah, sure, I'll hire an intern, I'll figure out something for them to do. Don't do that, please. Have a plan, have a structure. And you remember that rant I went on about defining success in the beginning and communicating that success to your intern? Sure enough, this will help you do it. If you have a plan, structure it. At the end of the internship, be able to point to it and say, see, that's success. We did it together. That's really valuable, and it makes sure that the experience is worth their time and yours. So here's the concrete plan that I promised. And these slides, by the way, I'm going to post them on the FileMaker community. You'll have all this material at some point when I get around to it. So what worked for Codence? I always do 4 months. I figure the first month is a throwaway. They're learning where the coffee is, either virtual or physical. They're trying to figure out whose email address is what, and so forth. So the first month is a throwaway-ish. I mean, of course, you want to ramp them up and get them productive and so forth. And then I always assign a mentor. I give them a human to connect with first when they have technical questions. I also give them a manager. So our operations manager supervises our interns and makes sure that they have access to our internal tools and get an email address and all that kind of stuff. In addition to a supervisor, I assign a mentor. And that mentor's job is just one thing: answer questions, help them learn FileMaker. Then, set up a Slack channel. I didn't put this on the slide, and I really should have. Introduce them to your team. It seems obvious, but when I hire, I should do a whole slide on this. When I hire an intern, I treat them as though I'm hiring them permanently. There's no difference from our onboarding process for an intern than for a full-time employee. And the reason I'm clear about what their role is, yes, in 4 months you're out, right? The internship will end. I'm clear about expectations. But I onboard them the same way because what I want is 2 things. One, for them to really come in and get all the support they need and so forth. But I want a permanent relationship with this person. When they graduate from Codence and they move on into the world, I want them to think well of us. And gosh, if I really get to the point where I want them to take a full-time position with us, either at the end of an internship or maybe on down the road, I want them perfectly positioned for that. So I onboard them just as I would anyone else. I introduce them to the team. They become a part of the team. And then I work via messaging, apps, and video conferencing, and introductions into meetings and so forth to incorporate them fully into the team. Training. Once a week, I get the whole team together, and we do a training. That training could be any number of things. It's not specifically tied to the internships, or the interns, rather. We can talk about any number of things, either a technical topic or a client story that worked well, or training on internal tools, and so forth. But I make sure that they join that team meeting. Again, for the same reasons that I just touched on a moment ago. Then lastly, I encourage them to join the FileMaker community, and that's the FileMaker community website, and then the greater community across multiple websites and messaging channels and LinkedIn and so forth. Get them out there. Get them plugged into the community so at the point at which they need to get a job, they can. Then I want to take the word consider out of this. Just hire 2 interns at a time, at least. I cannot more strongly advocate for this. If you've got the money, yeah, you can leverage your time a little bit. Sitting in a meeting, one of your hours gets distributed to 2 people. Now, that's easy to say. There are some cases where we've had interns where it's like, your skill gap is too disparate, so that doesn't quite work. So this isn't as black and white as I might make it here. But the thing that 2 interns will do is they form a community. They talk to each other. They reinforce each other. One person will figure out one thing, the other person will figure out another, and there's no sort of hesitation to waste that person's time by asking questions or whatnot, and they bond. They're like those little puppies. Puppies come in batches, right? So give them a friend. Give them a fellow puppy to hang out with. I've had experience hiring 1 intern. I've had experience hiring 2, and in some cases 3 interns at once. The results are really dramatically different. So I really want to encourage you to hire 2 interns at a time if you can. All right, so these are real projects that we've done with our interns. We rolled out 1Password to the company. An intern handled that from soup to nuts. I literally just said, hey, I want to use 1Password across the team and stop using Post-it notes as a way to store passwords or use the same 123 developer password that we use everywhere. That worked really, really well. Smart person, figured it out, boom, done. QA work, the big solution that I just described, one of our interns spent a lot of time testing that. Training videos, we had another client that needed some training videos. That person cranked them out like a pro. Analytics dashboard, we're doing R&D. So R&D is internal stuff that we're working on at Codence. We're doing some new products. Our interns have helped with that, both in terms of just kicking out some proof of concept ideas. I don't care what the code is underneath. I'm trying to figure out what this product needs to be, so help me flesh out a feature or what have you. That's an awesome way to work with an intern. And we're doing some work on a budgeting tool as well. That one's in progress as I speak. And then in addition to both client projects and internal stuff and quote-unquote spring cleaning, I also direct interns to take on a solo project that that person, him or herself, can own soup to nuts. You decide what the requirements are. You figure out how to code it. You don't have to worry about the kitchen and keeping it neat and tidy, however you want to organize the metaphorical, of course, kitchen. However you want to organize the file, do the interface design, what have you, that's all on you. But I'd encourage you to sit down with that intern and really spend some time thinking about what is it that inspires you, what software do you want to write? And for the next 4 months, you're going to be tinkering with this as we throw other work at you. And at the end of the 4 months, I want to sit down and I want to see this solution. And if you hadn't gotten to it or if you forgot about it along the way, then let's not do that. That's what that midway checkpoint, by the way, is for your measure of success. At the end, see how they're, or along the way, a couple times, see how they're doing with this and this solo project. And I'd encourage you to choose something that's real for them. Whatever their interests are, gardening or comic books or whatever, that's fine. But don't make it one of these sort of I'll just build an app for measuring peanuts because somehow that makes sense to, in the abstract. No. Choose something that you're passionate about, have a real problem to solve. We are apparently, according to Brad Freitag this morning, we're all problem solvers. I knew that. Choose a problem to solve. If you don't have a problem to solve, then the intern's going to get bored and it's not going to be a very focused project. And sure, you could think of this project as something that you want to deploy and actually use on down the road, but that burdens it to some degree. Then you start caring about interface, and then you start caring about features and requirements. So if you can come up with something that is really theirs to own, all the better in my view. And here's an approach that I will admit I've just tried once, and it worked really well, but only for a very short amount of time. So I'd like to continue experimenting with this, and that is to loan out your interns. So the idea is to turn to a client and say, hey, Mr. or Miss Client, you have a need for an intern, and I'm not talking about a permanent hire. I'm literally saying internship. And what we'd like to do is we'd like to staff this intern on your business exclusively and to some very large degree under your direction. If you've got spring cleaning or IT projects or stuff you need done, we'll hire and pay and take care of this person. But we want you to share the managerial load, and we want you to help give experience to this person. And the cool thing about that for the intern is they get exposure to your business, and they get exposure to another business. So it's 2 in 1, two internships for the price of one. It's a really effective way to get people, and the conversations are real. You're talking about real client relationships and so forth. Now, this is not a great strategy if you're working with a scary stakeholder who's mad at you. Fortunately, at Codence, we don't have any of those. But you've got to pick the right relationship for this. But it's an avenue I want to continue to explore. So this is it. This is my summary here. Do the right thing. I think for me, that's 98% of why I do this. I really do enjoy launching people's careers. There are a number of folks in the FileMaker community, fairly senior at this point, because I'm old, who started their careers by me teaching them FileMaker in a room somewhere and hiring them as an intern. That is immensely satisfying. So do that, because it's the right thing. Interns make you stronger. If you can teach it, you can learn it, you can inculcate it into your business, and you can communicate well about it, and so forth. Hiring an intern makes you raise your game in a really great way. Measure your dollars. Know how much it's going to cost. Have a spreadsheet somewhere that you can at least convince yourself makes a pretty good degree of economic sense. Or at least know what you're signing up for. If you're signing up for a 20 grand expense, then at least know that. And define success. I harped on that a couple times. Start in the beginning, lay out, and it doesn't need to be an elaborate white paper of 40 pages. A couple bullet points will do. Measure success, and then reinforce for your intern. At the end of all of this, we're going to go back to this piece of paper and tell ourselves together, because we're doing it together. This is our work together. This is what we're aiming for. Along the middle of the way, check in, see how that's doing. At the end, look at those success measures. And then share, whatever that can feed directly into a recommendation letter, as I mentioned. Assign a mentor. Interns need a master, if you will. They're an apprentice. So give them somebody they can turn to and apprentice for throughout their experience. And of course, also encourage them to communicate with the team and join them into team meetings and so forth. But having a direct mentor is a good thing. They'll have more success that way. I've been harping on this the whole session. Just have a plan. So don't try hey, warm, smart body. They'll just figure out what to do in my organization. That didn't work so well. And then hire 2 or more interns at a time, if you can. That's what I got for you. Thank you. Thank you. Any questions or discussions, reactions? Please. Oh, yeah. Totally, yeah. The question is, have you ever worked with remote interns, and what are the pros and cons? Well, for me, there isn't another option. All but one of our interns at Codence, so 4, that's 25%, whatever. 3 of our 4 interns were remote, and I think that right out of the gate, we don't have a choice as an organization. We meet on video all the time. We use Zoom and Slack to stay in touch, and I don't do otherwise. And meeting on video means turning on the webcam. I'm still working on a few of our crew. That's that final step in the process, but we'll get them there. I'm pretty convinced of it. And then I like to bake in, both within Slack and in meetings, some sort of human time. I ask people all the time what their favorite soup is. I don't know why that's an important question in my life, but somewhere along the way it became an important question. So get some culture in there, get some humanity in there, get to know folks, because you kind of have to force it, those water cooler conversations, but sure enough you do. And then the mentor thing is really the reason why I advocated for the mentor thing, because having someone to turn to and ask questions of and get some guidance from, because you're not necessarily just sitting in the same space. I know others of you work remotely. Are there any tips that you would add to that? It's a great question. No? All right. Another thing I do at times is I literally will schedule webcam meetings for fun stuff. Like we'll point a webcam at a board game and see if that works. And you know, after a few minutes, my team kind of patronizes me and tells me it was fun, and then we move on and go back to our day jobs. But I'm still trying. Our virtual Christmas party was, yeah. We ordered Chinese food for everyone and sort of went around the virtual room and had people like take cameras through their homes so you can see their space. It was fun. Thanks, Natessa. Any other questions? Okay, you guys are thirsty. All right. Thanks. Yeah, these slides are an hour old, so yes, I will post them to the FileMaker community, and please, for the 7 of you who've hung in there with me, an evaluation would be most appreciated. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.